Hello, everyone. This is Keith again, and thank you so much for coming and being a part of our continuing discussion of the subject of joy. Last time we looked at Psalm 51, that great psalm where King David of Israel, he's committed some terrible sins and he's repenting, he's asking to be cleansed and purified, and mostly he's asking that his relationship, his wonderful relationship with God, that he not lose that. We focused on the phrase, restore to me the joy of your salvation. And I'd like for us to continue today another minute or two on that, because I think it's very, very vital that we understand something about that. In my own life, I've noticed, perhaps you've noticed, I was so thrilled, I was so happy when I became a Christian and had obeyed the gospel. But you know, sometimes we get caught up in the business of being a Christian or other things that distract us too, and we forget, or we begin to treat as if it's almost a thing we're taking for granted, the very thing that brought us to being a Christian. And I believe that's an easy thing to happen. Because of that, I've decided through a long process, this didn't happen overnight by any stretch of the imagination, that I need to regularly, faithfully focus on, appreciate, just dwell in the joy itself of my salvation. I do that through my daily quiet time, and I've talked about that, not to brag and not to say you've got to do it the way I do it, but let me share something that I do that might be helpful to you, or at least help you think in this direction. I make two lists which I give thanks. One I call my yesterday Thanksgiving list, and that one's fun because I can run through and remember all the things that the Lord did to help me and bless me throughout the day. And then I have my lifetime Thanksgiving list, which is also really more joyful kind of experience. And that's the one where, and this has taken several years to develop this list, but what do you think I always put down as my number one thing on that one? I write out the word salvation, and I think about that for a few moments. And then I go ahead, of course, and quickly write out the names of my wife, children, grandchildren, parents, other family, friends, and a few other things that I'm thankful for. By the way, those people that I mentioned and others, they understand. They don't see that as a put down that I'm giving them number two and so forth. Because there's a principle. Once you put the things of the Lord first, you're really lifting, elevating all the other things in your life and giving them more meaning. So I'm glad to do that. But to focus on salvation, to really not take it for granted, to think about what a significant thing and how that very thing coming into that kind of relationship with God has changed the very direction and orientation and obviously the eventual outcome, the eternal outcome of my life. That gives me great joy. I also noticed back in previous times when I wasn't doing that, if I'd have one of those lulls where I didn't think about salvation very much, or maybe not at all for a while, I believe I had a corresponding lull in my joy. So think about that. Challenge yourself to ask yourself something like this. Do I really appreciate and do I focus enough on my salvation just for it? And will I let that produce a joy in me that it probably will? While we're here, let's also go ahead and talk about one other thing from Psalm 51. In that same section where he's making all these requests of God about restoring the relationship, and he's fearful about having the risk of losing that relationship, he says, "Take not your Holy Spirit from me." He says that to the Lord. And I want us to start tomorrow a different direction, and don't get scared. I'm not going to go off into all the different and controversial theologies and doctrines and interpretations about the Holy Spirit. Don't have time in a short series, and I'd have to have 10 more sessions to even begin to talk about that in a reasonable way. But what I do want us to do is to think about some passages and the concept of how can the Holy Spirit work in my life today, a 21st century Christian, and what's the relationship between the way he can work and joy that I can have. You may be surprised. I hope you're excited about and looking forward to that, because I am looking forward to presenting it. See you next time.